I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I just lost every bit of confidence. I should know how to fix this. I fix other people. Why can't I fix myself? I dread to share how much I spent trying to fix my own health. And I was miserable. A lot of women just get to this point where they feel lost. They feel like they don't know who they are anymore, and they give up hope. They're like, well, this is just aging. And I'm like, it is not.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Lucy Super Fox show. On this week's episode, I am interviewing somebody I class as one of my closest friends and someone I know you are going to be inspired by, the fabulous Sarah Law. Sarah is not only a nutritionist, but she is an absolute nerd when it comes to all things women's health. So today we're going to be talking about perimenopause, hormonal changes, the immune system, gut health, and how to help yourself during your healing journey. Let's dive in. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I honestly couldn't think of a better person to have as my first guest. Now, obviously, you might not be watching this in the exact order that we have kind of like put it together, but Sarah is my first guest, and I honestly couldn't think of anyone better. Sarah and I have built one of the most beautiful friendships over the last kind of 3-4 years, and I feel like, if anybody makes you feel seen and heard and recognised, it's definitely you, my friend. So I wanted to give, I guess, a little bit of that seen and heard back to you and have people hear a little bit about your story and get to know a little bit about you, because you've created something so special in the last few years in your career specifically. But I think you also have so much to share in terms of the journey you've been on with health. And, this podcast is very much about the eras of our life, the seasons that we go through, especially in midlife, right? Which we're, as much as we're not going to talk about ages today, that's where we both hang out. So I would love to dive straight in, if that's okay with you. And rather than me introduce like what you do and who you are and where you're from, I would love you to just share a little bit about your background, and then we can dive straight in.
Okay, let's do it. So thank you for having me on, firstly. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. And I'm super excited to see the rest of this podcast unfold.
Thanks.
So I started my journey actually as a professional performer. Worked in musical theatre for, far too long. And I loved what I did. I was really passionate about my career. However, there was a part of me that always knew that I was destined for something else, but I wasn't quite sure what it was at the time. But if I look back now to like my childhood, I can absolutely see that it was where I was meant to be, is where I am now. So as a nutritionist, helping women in their 40s thrive. So that passion really started when I witnessed my mum go through the menopause at just 32 years old. So she was very, very young, and she kind of went down the mainstream medicine route. She was put onto HRT, which at the time was not what it is today. No. It was the horse's urine version.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah, they used to use equine urine. I know, bonkers, for the estrogen part. And obviously very, very different to how female hormones function. And it ruined her. Like, she was a shell of who she originally was, depressed, anxious. She lost a lot of hair. She lost all her confidence. And I remember just seeing that in my mum and thinking, what on earth is going on? But at that age, when you're so young, you don't really know how to help. You don't really know what's going on. But what I also witnessed was my mum become her own health advocate. So she then realised that route wasn't serving her. And I'm not. This is not to say anything about HRT, because I am actually a massive fan of HRT as to what it is today. But back then, very, very different. But she was the woman that read every single book. She researched everything, and she fought for herself. So she used to take us to all these herbal shops. And at that time as well, when she was losing loads of hair, she got severe eczema as well. So this is probably something we will dive into at some point, but how the immune system is so linked with hormones as well. So she was obviously going through all these changes, severe eczema on her head to the point where it was just weeping all the time, like terrible pain. And she would take us to all these different herbal shops and buy all these different herbs. She did an elimination diet. All these things.
That's wild, that long ago that she did that, right?
Yeah, and completely rectified herself. And then what she did was she basically researched everything about bioidentical progesterone. And she was like, this is what I need. And she went to the doctors with all of these case studies, with all of this information armed, and was like, you need to give me this. And they were adamant that they couldn't because it wasn't patented. So obviously they can't make money on it if it's not patented. And she fought for it and she got it. And so obviously I watched that entire journey. Yeah, watched that entire journey with my mum as a very young child. And that was obviously kind of in the back of my mind, even though it didn't come to the forefront of my mind until later on in life. And so when I was kind of ending my performing career, I was like, right, what is next for me? And that's when I realised that nutrition was absolutely where I was meant to be. That's where the start of the journey began. I also myself had some interesting relationships, shall we say, with food. In my kind of teens and 20s, I had orthorexia and anorexia. And again, that was something that I had to have a lot of therapy to work on. And it again was one of those things that really fueled me in realising that I had such a little amount of knowledge about nutrition. What I thought was healthy was very, very different to what actual health was. And I believe in this day and age, even with the wealth of knowledge that is out there, so many people are in that same place where they think they're being healthy. But when you actually drill down to their habits, their lifestyle, what they're eating on a daily basis, what they're thinking on a daily basis, and you're like, that's not health. So I wanted to be that person that could give people the knowledge, but in a way that made sense to them and was easy to understand. And I do believe that one of my superpowers is being able to take complex topics and make them understandable for people.
I still think you're a total brain box. Whenever I listen, I'm like, can you say that again? I'm like, okay, one more from the top, like, because
there's some big words that come out.
There are some big words that come out sometimes of your mouth, for sure.
So yeah, that I wanted to be that person that helped other women look and feel their best, particularly as they go through the aging process, because I do believe, again, a lot of women just get to this point where they feel lost. They feel like they don't know who they are anymore, and they give up hope. They're like, well, this is just aging. And I'm like, it is not. Like, I know women in their 60s and beyond who are in the best bodies of their life, feeling the most confident they've ever felt and the healthiest they've ever been, but they aren't doing what they did when they were 20, because you just can't. Your body is different. You have to treat it in a different way. But so many people just give up hope and go, well, that's just it. This is me.
And totally that. And I think, a big part of the work that I've moved into and evolved in the last few years has been about the identity side of that and the mindset side of, midlife and when our responsibilities change. And, there's this whole stigma around this concept of a midlife crisis, like it's a bad thing. And actually, I think it's a gateway to actually your authenticity and your power and who you were probably, like you said, always supposed to be. Yeah. But there was the shadows of what society told you, what your parents wanted you to be, where you ended up. So I want to dive a little bit into your personal health story, if that's okay, because I know that, I was kind of around at this time when this was all happening for you, and I know that yours is probably a little bit more extreme than maybe most women listening to this, but I would love to dive into a little bit around what happened to you kind of in that pandemic window, not necessarily connected to the pandemic, just to be super clear, but what happened on your personal health journey, because I think a lot of that has also been a big part of the creation of what you do now and your passions for now. So I'd love to share a little bit about that, and then I've got some questions to dig into.
Yes. So if we go back to kind of 2019, so I was competing. I'm a pro bikini athlete as well. So I'd been in competition prep on and off for like a couple of years. And this is the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, that's the thing that wrecked your body. And I'm like, actually, no, it was one of the things that saved me. Because previously to that, I used to undereat all the time without even really thinking about it. Like, I was very conscious of my body, as I always have been since a young age. It's something I've worked on, mentally for a very long time. But I just used to undereat, and I didn't realise how much I used to undereat until I started competing, and my coach gave me a food plan and was like, right, you need to track your calories, you need to track your macros, and this is what you need to hit. And I remember tracking my calories for a couple of days and being like, oh my goodness, I've been eating like 1,100 calories and just been surviving on that, thinking I'm fine, and not even realising and not really feeling bad with it either. Like, because the body can deal with a certain amount at a certain age. Right? Yeah, exactly. And then it comes and bites you on the arse later in life. So I'd been competing, all was great. And then I had a bout of probably just a bit of stress in life, I think, around the pandemic and everything. Too much stress, coupled with my body probably being a bit depleted because I'd planned show after show after show and they all kept getting cancelled. So it was like I was on prep really for an entire year. And then I got COVID. And that was kind of like the final little straw that just tipped my body over the edge. And it's not that COVID was necessarily, the thing, but it was just that tiny thing for an already too full stress bucket. Yeah. And this is what we often see with something like that, where people get, say, long hauler COVID, for example, which is kind of what I had. It's that it happens to people who are either type A personality, living high stress lives.
Amen.
Yes. Or even athletes as well, who push their bodies to the extreme.
Yeah.
And even though we see those as the healthiest people on the planet, they're still pushing their bodies to an extreme place that it isn't necessarily meant to go to.
I mean, we've literally just finished watching the Olympics, so we're all relatable to that for sure.
This is it. So I was kind of that person, type A, very driven, hardworking, very focused all the time, competing, pushing my body, and didn't realise I was. I didn't realise the wheels were kind of falling off a little bit. And there probably were, in all honesty, warning signs much, much earlier. Like my hormones were terrible. Like I really didn't have a cycle for most of my adult life. Kind of put it to the side and was like, it's fine, don't really need that. I'm not planning on having children. Who needs periods? And didn't really think about it that much. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, if there's one regret I have, it's not valuing my female cycle as I should have done, because it is one of the vital signs of health. And so COVID came along, got COVID, and my body just went wild. And I was like, what on earth is actually going on here? And being a nutritionist myself, you know, I was like, okay, this is things I should understand and I should know how to deal with. And all the things that should have worked just didn't work. So I basically just felt terrible. I had severe brain fog to the point where it was like I had a bubble just on my head 24/7, and trying to concentrate was the hardest thing on the planet. Like if people spoke to me, I was like, the amount of concentration it took to actually take in what they were saying was beyond belief. So I had that going on. I put on about 10 kilos, doing nothing different with my diet, not eating any differently, not eating any more. I just could not lose weight. It was like severe weight loss resistance. And it's because my immune system was just completely mental. And this is one of the things that women often overlook, is that their immune system plays such a huge role in whether they can lose weight or not, and how their body is functioning. And unfortunately, when we go through menopause, our immune system is so intricately linked to our hormones. So in high estrogen states and low estrogen states, it means your immune system is more primed to go haywire. And so for me, if I look at my history, the reason it happened was because I'd had low hormones most of my life. Yeah. So I had estrogen that was pretty much bottomed out. And so, you know, my body was just in a very, very vulnerable place.
Yeah.
And this is what I see a lot now working with women during menopause. It's not an autoimmune condition, but it acts very similarly in the body to what an autoimmune condition would do, because it's their immune system that is triggering all this inflammation, because it's either that they've got high estrogen because when they're going through perimenopause and estrogen is up and down, or they've got low estrogen because it's now bottoming out when they go through menopause, and then their immune system is just wild. So as females, generally, we are the superior race. I mean, we know that.
I mean,
didn't need to tell anyone, but we are. And that's because we have primed immune systems. We have stronger immune systems than men. And that's why the man flu is actually a real thing. You know, so...
No, we're not going there.
It really is. They can't handle it because their bodies are just not equipped like ours to deal with it. So
with their beautiful 24-hour cycle.
I know, yeah. Bastards. But yeah, so when they get ill, it's like it hits them hard, but they kind of get over it. Whereas with females, because our immune system is already heightened, we can deal with things better, but it means we're much more prone to our immune systems being triggered. So that's why you'll see autoimmunity happen a lot more to females than it does to men, because our immune system is already here. You poke it like you poke a bear, boom, over the top. So that's essentially what happened to me. And it took a lot, 3 years of trying probably every kind of thing you could possibly think of. I mean, I dread to share how much I spent trying to fix my own health. And I was miserable. Like I was just not me, like you knew at that time. It was like, nah, she's not there. She is literally not there. And also because this whole journey with, you know, body confidence, etc., a huge part of my identity was still linked to how I looked. And then when you uncontrollably gain weight that you can do nothing about, it seems, I was just like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I look at myself and I don't look like me. I don't feel like me. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I just lost every bit of confidence. And I think it's because as a nutritionist, I was like, I should know how to fix this. I fix other people. Why can't I fix myself? And that's the most challenging thing sometimes, when you're sitting there going, well, then who are you? What do you do? Like, you know, your whole identity is challenged. So I lost a lot of confidence during that period. But now looking back, it was actually the biggest gift that could have happened to me. It taught me so much. It made me do a lot of deep work that probably I'd been resisting for a very long time. The stuff that you do that I probably need to do, and you probably saw in me many years ago that you were like, she needs to do the work.
No, we never project.
But you just know. And I'd done a lot of therapy, you know, I'd done CBT and everything in my past, but I realised that, I have got a very kind of obsessive, addictive personality type. I know my mum is very similar in terms, like she always says, God, I've got an addictive personality type. And I'm like, well, I've probably, some of that is genetic or, nature, nurture, all of that side of things. But also a lot of that comes from, previous experiences in life, as you know, and what's going on in your childhood and things like that. And it's not necessarily, I had an amazing childhood. I was very blessed with incredible parents and a great upbringing. But when your brain is so moldable and, you take things on, it could be one thing that someone says to you. Like I've got two brothers who are boys, they're just assholes when you're a little girl. You're the odd one out. So it's all those little things that then create this personality type of, I need to be the best, I need to prove myself.
And society feeds that. I mean, what you've talked about and shared there, I would put under the umbrella of your healing era or your healing journey or your healing season. And, I talked a lot about this in my previous podcast, extensively as I went through my healing journey over the last few years, moving into a new era now. And, I very much talked about the energetics, the mindset, the identity side of a healing era. But I'd love you to kind of, I guess, maybe share a little bit more about, what you did for your body, you know, and obviously not to say that there weren't other elements to it, but what you personally did, like where was your focus? Or maybe somebody that is going through these hormonal bumps and changes, like I'm potentially in early peri-menopause and obviously working with you to get myself back on track. So for someone maybe like me who's noticing these things, who is saying things like, oh, it's just my hormones or my hormones are changing, how did kind of your journey and maybe where they might be at right now, like what would be kind of the pathway and what pathway did you take in that window?
So I had to work a lot on liver detoxification, gut health. They are always two crucial pieces of the puzzle, no matter how much work you've done in the past.
Put down the vino then.
Put down the vino. Unfortunately, okay. I'm sorry. Everyone hates me when I say that. And the coffee sometimes as well.
I know, I had one today and I never even drink it. And I got here and I was like that. I was like, oh God, I haven't had one in like 4 months.
But yeah, so I did a lot of work on that. And then I had to do a lot of work on what we call autophagy. So
this is your favourite word,
Oh, it's my
Sarah.
favourite word right now. It's the hot topic. So a lot of different fasting protocols. And in all honesty, that was something I'd really avoided up until that
You're
point.
You're going to make me do that, aren't you?
Probably, yeah. I'm sorry.
I knew it. I said this to my husband the other day. I was like...
She's going to make me not eat.
I ate something for breakfast that wasn't like... it was a Saturday morning and I was like having a gluten-free pastry or something. And I was like, I'm going to enjoy this because when Sarah gets my results, I was like, I know I won't be eating at 9 a.m. in the morning. And just had a little giggle about it. So I'm prepared. It's okay.
Cool.
Carry on. Sorry.
When I tell you why, then you'll know why.
No, I know why.
I know.
I'm excited. Anyway, back to your fabulous word, autophagy.
Yeah, so autophagy. One of the key parts of my healing journey was actually fasting. I had to do some quite deep, what we call autophagy work. And I will explain what that means because some people are probably like, autopha what?
Yeah.
So
I definitely was the first time I heard it.
Yeah. And this bit might be slightly technical, but hopefully I'll explain it in a way that makes sense. So
everything you say always makes sense in this weird sense of just like, oh, I get it. I've no idea what it means, but I get it.
Good. That makes me happy. Okay, so here we go then. Are you ready? Science.
I'm ready.
So in the body, we have kind of two energy pathways. So we've got one called mTOR and one called AMPK. So mTOR, think of it like our build phase. So this is where we're burning sugar. So in mTOR, we create hormones, we create proteins, we build muscle, create collagen. So it's really important for growth. We need it. But the downside of being in this pathway too much is that you're burning sugar. So insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, potential cancers, because it's growth, essentially.
Inflammation, right?
Yeah, inflammation. Okay. So then AMPK is something that we need to be able to access. So it's like an energy sensor in the body. So when the body senses a lack, so let's say caloric restriction when there's not enough coming in, keto, like removing a macronutrient, or fasting, nothing coming in for a period of time, the body should switch over to this AMPK pathway. And in this pathway, there's magic that happens. So over here, we do something called autophagy, which is like cleaning out our cells. So essentially, in our cells, we've got all these little things, little proteins. And over time, they can degrade, just like anything, with a battery, with anything in life, use it a lot, it gets a bit funky. So there's parts of the cell that need kind of regenerating. So autophagy is like clearing out the trash. It takes out bits of the cell that are no longer functioning as they should and removes them and then regenerates them, recycles them. It's amazing. It's like recycling, essentially. So you're...
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, making your cells...
Like recycling. Oh, that's cute. Okay, so autophagy is like recycling.
Exactly. Recycling parts of the cells and making them work again. So that means you've got healthy cells, and healthy cells are everything. If we've got unhealthy cells, we're going to have an unhealthy body. One of the other things that happens in this AMPK pathway is we start to clear out unhealthy cells. So some cells become what we call senescent cells, which, think of them like zombie cells. They're these cells that have stopped replicating in the body, because that's how we basically create new cells, is replication of other cells. So it's like the body stops replicating them in case there's DNA damage in that cell, and it doesn't want to replicate a funky cell. So you've got cells, that stop.
Smart.
Yeah, very smart. It's a very smart. I mean, our bodies are just wild.
Yeah.
So these senescent cells, they're not quite dead, but they're not alive and doing what they should do. And they accumulate in the body. And the problem is, as we age, our immune system gets less efficient at clearing them out. And then when there's a lot of inflammation, when there's, a lot of stress on the body, the immune system isn't working as well as it should.
Like if someone's in peri-menopause, or the hormones are changing, or maybe they've had a baby, or that,
Absolutely.
life is stressful, because again, we carry a lot more responsibilities in our 30s and 40s than we do right in our 20s. Yeah?
Totally. So you then get this accumulation of senescent cells that should be gone but aren't. They're sitting in the body, and they release inflammation. So they've got these inflammatory cytokines that they release, which then basically piss the immune system off.
Like a bit like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then the immune system is getting triggered by these inflammatory markers that are being released from these senescent cells, making the immune system even more overreactive, more inflammation, less being cleared out, and you're just stuck in this cycle. So we need to clear those senescent cells out, and when you're in that AMPK pathway through fasting, etc., that will help clear those senescent cells out. So you've got that. It also makes you more sensitive to your hormones. So on our cells, we have receptor sites. So think of them like little ears that are waiting, or like even docks where
This is the problem now, Sarah. You give me a metaphor, and everyone
everyone
who's out driving is just imagining all their cells with little ears sticking out the side of them.
Oh, I love it. So you've got these receptor sites on your cells, and that's where hormones dock. So you could have all the hormones in your bloodstream, but if they're not docking onto your cells, they're doing nothing. So hormones are basically a messenger. They're there to send a message, and they need to dock onto receptor sites on cells to be able to give the message to the cell for something to happen, for example, like the cell to open up. So when these receptor sites get blocked, which happens when you're inflamed, it's like, think of it a bit like the little ears have got earmuffs on. They're not listening. All these different analogies. People are like,
God,
what
okay.
the hell? So you've got your earmuffs on. The cells aren't listening. They can't hear the hormones. And that means hormones aren't doing their job. So insulin isn't able to do its job because it's not docking on, which means glucose can't get out of the bloodstream and then do its job in the cell, because glucose needs to be transported from the bloodstream into the cell to be converted into energy. That stops happening. Then you produce more and more insulin. Then you become insulin resistant, because the more a cell is exposed to a hormone, the more the receptor sites kind of get chopped off. The body kind of goes, no, there's too much of this, so I'm just going to down-regulate. I'm going to put the earmuffs on. I'm not listening anymore. And that happens with all hormones. Thyroid hormone, if you have someone on too high thyroid hormone, it will basically shut off their own production. They become desensitized to it. Same with progesterone, estrogen, all hormones, exactly the same thing. There's a sweet spot. So when we get into this AMPK pathway, we reduce inflammation. It makes us more sensitive to hormones again, which means hormones work better. And this is one of the things that really helps women through menopause, is actually feeling their hormones again. They're actually able to feel them, which means you need less for them to elicit the response that we want.
Especially if you're using HRT, right? Like if you're putting something in, whether it's bioidentical, whether it's synthetic, you want to be able to tell what's working. And if you're just, I kind of have an image in my head of like throwing paint at a wall and hoping it sticks. This is it. We've talked about this extensively, but I was medicated thyroid after my own health journey bump, and brought myself off that as a result of my own healing journey, more emotional and mental. But that was definitely what was happening with me, is we were throwing thyroxine at me in the hope that would kick everything else in. But actually there was probably a period there where I would have benefited. I mean, I did do that for a year, but maybe I would have benefited from meeting 2024 Sarah at that point.
Absolutely. I would have got in there and got that autophagy working. But absolutely, and this is the problem that we kind of have in mainstream medicine, is I'm super glad that women can get HRT, and we're in a place where it's acceptable, and people are realizing it's not dangerous how they used to think it was, that it causes all of that stuff is kind of being dismissed now, which is great, or being debunked, should I say. However, the problem is that most of the time the dosage that women are on is just far too much, and it's making them not sensitive to it anymore. And the same with thyroid hormone, etc. If you put too much in, it will just shut off your own body's production completely. And then if you don't replace with enough, then there's a big gap.
And I'm going to, obviously you being an IFBB pro bikini, and obviously everyone knows that my husband is a bodybuilder. And so I think a lot of people who are in that world, like if you're competitor listing or anything, when you know a guy that's using, I was going to say gear, but I don't think people know what gear means. I think they mean that means a Saturday night. Like who's using, steroids or using that can often be what happens is, obviously I think, and there's a lot of misinformation in this world too around how much to use, what's appropriate to use, what's right to use. And I think there's definitely that world of like more is better. And I think that has almost translated across the fitness industry too. Yeah. Even in terms of supplementation, it's like, well, more is always better. And as we both know, that's totally not the case.
No. And that's it. It's like you sometimes need something to support your body's production and just to give it that bump. But if you give too much, you're going to shut your body's production off completely. Now, obviously, when women are going through menopause, their production is declining. That's natural, but they are still producing some hormone. From their adrenal glands, they will still.
It doesn't just fall off a cliff.
No, it shouldn't do. If
you're like, well, it shouldn't.
Some women's does, but it shouldn't. Depending on, again, stress levels, immune system, all of these factors that go into it. So, but if you stay in this AMPK pathway too long, your body's too clever. Your body will go, no. If you stay here, you'll basically die because you'll burn through all your muscle. You'll have no fat left because you access fat stores as energy in this pathway, so it can be immense for weight loss, which is why caloric restriction will cause weight loss. But if you do it too long, it will backfire
100%.
Because your body basically will adapt and go, no, you've tried to stay here too long. You've gone keto too long. You've fasted too much.
You competed
you've dieted
too much.
too much.
You did all the diets. You did all the... Because, I mean, look, we both know that's the conversation we both have with a lot of women, whether they're my clients coming in because they feel like they want to deal with kind of their emotions around food and their relationship with food. There's always a season in there of the over dieting. And I know that you see a lot of women like this too.
Massively. And this is the problem. So women are doing all the things that should put them here, but they're not getting the medicinal benefits because they've tried to do it for too long or too much of it. So I see a lot of women that have cut all carbs during menopause because they're like, well, you're less sensitive to insulin, so carbs are the devil. And I'm like, well, no, actually, you can have an insulin response from protein. It's not just carbs that the issue, it's the type of carbs you're eating and the inflammatory response that's causing the issue. But it's also that if you've over dieted or you've cut carbs for too long, your body will kick you out and then you'll just get stuck burning sugar and then you can't even access this. So what we have to do is we have to basically build the body up first, build the metabolism in a nice anti-inflammatory way, focus on the liver and the gut, which is what I do with women when I work them through a very specific process over a 3 to 6 month window. Liver first. So we're like, we need to open up your detox pathways, make sure you are eliminating toxins properly because hormones get broken down by the liver. And if you're not doing that efficiently, you're going to have imbalances in your hormones. That is a fact. Your liver equates for about 15% of your metabolic rate. So if your liver's not working well, you're going to be a little bit buggered too. And people just think, oh, my liver's fine. That's what it's there for.
I'm not yellow, so therefore I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a detox hormone. Detox organ. It's supposed to detox my body. And I'm like, yes, but have you seen the world that we live in? It is bombarded left, right and centre with toxins. It is dealing with a lot
Plastics,
every day.
metals,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then HRT on top of that.
Especially
HRT
synthetic.
Great, yeah, then you've got another burden on the liver that needs looking after. So we need to open up those detox pathways. We need to feed you up in an anti-inflammatory way because, again, the liver needs so many nutrients. We've got different liver detox pathways and they all require different nutrients. So we want to shuttle all the nutrients into the liver detox pathways to help you detox properly, nourish your adrenals, calm the stress response down, chill the F out, get you out of this fight or flight mode, nourish your thyroid, give you some flipping carbs again to get your thyroid working because your thyroid loves carbohydrates. If you starve your body of carbs all the time, your thyroid function is probably going to tank after a period of time. So we do that. Then we work on the gut because, again, pretty much everyone in this day and age has got some kind of gut issues. We need to fix that. And then that's when we can go, right, now we've done those things, let's look at hormones. If we look at hormones from the offset, it's not a fair representation because these things affect hormones so much. Hormones affect the liver and the gut, but the liver and the gut affect hormones. They're bidirectional. So I always work clients through that process first and then go, right, now we need to focus on your hormones. And this is when we can start looking at the autophagy work. Now your body's not stressed. Now we've fed you up and we've got you out of fight or flight and your body's going to respond because you haven't been doing all the things that should get you here and they're not working anymore. If it's not working, definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over. We need to go over here. We need to build in the mTOR. And then we can flip you over and start using autophagy, using fasting protocols, maybe doing a bit of keto, doing a bit of calorie deficits, etc. And your body should respond.
Yeah, building those strong foundations and then from those foundations. And I've always said this about hormones, one of the best analogies I think I ever heard was your hormones are like a house of cards. And if one's out, they're all out. Yeah. And so when we try to kind of fix and isolate what we're actually doing is just, you know, polishing a turd springs to mind.
Absolutely.
You know, because what we're then doing is we're just brushing over something. And I think a lot of the world that we live in, and this is the challenge when you become an expert in something, right, is that you see all the nuance and all the depth and all the layers. And, you know, for me, it's like when someone says, you know, well, I'm feeling down, so I'm going to do some affirmations. And I'm like, why are you feeling down? Okay. You know, for me, that's kind of a surface level. And I think, so, you know, without kind of overwhelming the audience in terms of them thinking, oh my God, I've got to spend 5 years working with Lucy in therapy and 5 years working with Sarah. Oh my God. You know, I mean, you can work with both of us. We do that quite a lot. But in all seriousness, you know, if someone's listening to this and they're, you know, thinking, oh my God, this sounds like me, you know, where would they start? Like if they just wanted to learn more, if they just wanted to kind of open up, maybe they're not quite ready to reach out to have that conversation, but they're kind of open to next steps. Where would you go from here?
So step number 1 is just nailing the fundamentals, like going back to basics. And I think this is where people are confused, is what are basics? So an anti-inflammatory whole foods diet, like balanced with proteins, carbs and fats. So every single meal, good amount of protein, good amount of carbs, good amount of fats, and choosing the right ones. So with our Thrive program that we run, this is what it's all about, is nailing the fundamentals, you know, getting your body in a place where it's nourished, not undernourished, which is so many people. They're just in this undernourished state and thinking, how many times am I eating from a packet, or how many times am I eating real food? And the majority of your diet should be real whole food. So has it come from the ground, or has it come from a high quality animal? You know, organic meats, fish, eggs, vegetables galore, root vegetables, a few grains, some legumes. That's a Mediterranean style diet. Healthy fats, olive oils, avocado, nuts and seeds.
Avocado oil is my new favourite thing ever.
Avocado oil, absolute winning at life. And guacamole. Along with the guac.
Yeah, but if I make guacamole, I say make, I mean buy. I don't know why I said make. My husband will listen to this and be like, when have you ever made guacamole? No, if I, like, that's a danger game for me though. Even with a rice cake, like not even with something bad for you.
Rice cakes for me are like crack. I'm like, keep me away from a rice cake.
That's your competition prep.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's your comp prep mind.
It's ridiculous. It's like ingrained rice cakes. But it's that balance between the foods, and alongside that, working on the mindset, working on the, you know, rest and digest portion of life. You know, are you de-stressing your body, and are you moving your body in the right way? So that's what we kind of do in the Thrive program. It's all about that.
It's why we created it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've been there, and like, you know, I've said at the time of this, and who knows, by the time this comes out, I could have done another podcast telling you what's going on with me. But, you know, it's why we always lean into the things that we've both experienced. You know, I've been on a long, much like Sarah's talked about, you know, I went through a period of fasting and keto diet when I first got sick. I talked on my last podcast about when I was very sick in 2012, 2013, and how I came back from that, working with functional health practitioners, working with, and, you know, then I evolved into kind of my emotional healing journey, and how you can't really separate one from the other. And this is why a lot of my clients, you know, I know this for sure, we attract who we can serve and help, you know, are going through peri-menopause. And that's because, you know, and you've said this word, it's the gateway, you know. And for me, I think when this happens, whether you call it a midlife crisis, whether it's the change in your hormones, whether it's a change in identity, this is the opportunity to redefine the next chapter.
Totally.
And I know that you've massively done that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I truly believe as well that menopause is given to women as their gift from God, from the universe, to actually make them take care of themselves again. Because so many women put everyone and everything before themselves, whether it's, you know, kids, partners, everything else comes first and then they're second. And I'm like, now you've got to put you first, because if you don't, you're going to be in a pretty bad state in a few years' time. This is your opportunity to like you said, redefine who you are, create the new you, the new version of you. And
if you know, and I always say this to parents, and we're both not parents, so we're always acutely aware of this when we share advice and give wisdom. But, you know, I always just think, you know, you talked about the example of your mom and the example she set for you, and you watched what she did and went, okay, I don't want that. And so, but what we have to remember is we can't say no to anything. Like, our reticular activating system in our mind doesn't understand the word no. It only understands focus and attention. So when we give attention to something, whether we want it or not, we will often recreate that. That's actually a lot of what, you know, generational trauma actually is just the recreation of patterns, behaviors and beliefs. And so if you have a young daughter, or you have young women who are looking up to you, what you do with your life, they are watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, there's a great quote that we both know is, people don't do what you say, they do what you do. And so it's all very well us sat here, but if you didn't see us actually walking our walk, talking our talk, you know, practicing what we preach, then you wouldn't be listening to this and you wouldn't be following us, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important part.
Totally.
Okay, so I have some they're not like quick fire questions, but they are
I get scared.
just questions. So first of all, I would love you to pick one of these topics, then I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. So these are your 3 choices. So money, love, or body.
Body.
Okay. I freaking could have predicted that a mile off. Okay, so with body, what do you know for sure? What's a lesson that you've had, or something that, you know, like if you had to distill it down to one lesson, what would it be?
Everything works until it doesn't.
Oh, mic drop.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, with diet, with everything works until it doesn't. You know, we have to realize that the body doesn't just stay in one state. It will always adapt to what you do. So if you do anything for too long that is good, it will always end up being bad. And that can be with foods, it can be, you know, with everything, with exercise, it applies to everything. If you think about it, you know, going to the gym is good for you. But if you go to the gym for 5 hours a day, every day of the week for the rest of your life, it's going to become maladaptive. Your body will hate you. So everything is that. With the diet that you're doing, you need to switch things up. You need to change things around. And I know that's not what people want to hear, because as humans, we want what is simple.
Routine, predictable, the same. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not to say, you know, don't have consistent habits. You absolutely do need consistent, healthy habits.
But you also know my views on the word consistent.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to be able to change things up. So like I mentioned, fasting can be an incredible tool, but you do it too much and it's going to mess you up. Keto can be an incredible tool, do it too much and it will mess you up. The basis should be what I mentioned, Mediterranean, whole foods as much as possible. That's just your kind of standard. And then throw in some things every now and again when you need to help your body make the changes that it needs to, because the body will only change under stress. And people think stress is all bad. And I'm like, no. The body will never change if you don't stress it. And again, this is something I see time and time again now, is there's kind of these 2 extremes of either people completely stressing their bodies out, or people being like, oh no, I can't do that because that's too stressful. That's going to stress my nervous system out, and I can't possibly do that because that's too much. And I'm like, no, you have to stress your body, but it's knowing when to stress your body is the crucial part.
Totally. Okay, my next question is, you know, this podcast is about seasons and about eras and about the chapters of our life. So I guess, what era have you just been in? Mm-hmm. And what is the next era for Sarah Law?
Oh, goodness, that's a question. So I was in a deep, I would say, healing era for a good 3.5, 4 years. And I feel like I've now, do you know what? I'm in an excitement era.
Ooh,
a real excitement era where I feel like I'm on purpose and I'm where I'm meant to be and doing what I'm meant to be doing. And yeah, with all the women that I'm working with and all the things that I'm doing right now, and I'm doing apprenticeships, and I'm just like, I'm a geek, literally.
You're a total nerd,
I'm
babe.
such a nerd. I'm like, I just feel like I'm absorbing myself into everything to do with the nutrition world, even more than I ever have done before. And I've always, you know, been in it, but now I'm like, I am in it. And I'm just at this place where I know to my core how many people I can help. And that's what drives me every day, is like, I know, because it's like when I see women now, I'm like, I know exactly what's going on with you.
Same, babe, same. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't look at them and go gut, liver, hormones, but I can meet somebody within a set, like, it's once you become informed about a particular thing, and if they're coming to you around that, you've probably got a good guess straight away. Like, I meet people and I'm like, oh, I know what your trauma is. Yeah. And that's not to diminish it, but it's actually just this thing of like, I know I can help you, but you also have to be ready to be helped.
100%. And this is it. You know, there's again, this kind of instant gratification world that we live in, where people are just at this point where they want things to happen immediately. And I'm like, unfortunately, your body didn't get to where it is in a month. You're not going to rectify everything.
Your habits, your beliefs, your behaviors, your mindset system, the way you think, the way you feel, your wealth, like, it didn't get there overnight. No. You know, it's about who you've become and who you're becoming. And like you touched on this earlier massively about, you know, you talked about when you help people go through the foundations and then when they work on the hormones, you know, we're already talking 6 months at that point. And I think, to your point, we're looking for a quick fix because being uncomfortable is uncomfortable. Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that, to your point, there is an era for being comfortable. There's a time when you need that. There's a time when you're dealing and healing. But actually, the answer is getting uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. That is the answer to anything. But that uncomfort doesn't have to be stressful.
No.
And I think that's the world we live in. It's like you're either uncomfortable and horribly stressed, or you're comfortable and very chill. And actually, I'm very uncomfortable right now. You know, I'm going into an era of, like, I'm calling it my freedom era at the time of, and that's great, but it's very unknown for me.
Yeah.
And as someone who is very like you, a recovering A-type, a recovering high performer, a recovering overachiever, you know, for me not to have a real plan, like, you know, with this podcast, we're experimenting, I'm having fun.
Yeah.
That for me is a whole new era, and I'm uncomfortable in the not knowing.
Yeah.
But when we are comfortable and we're in the known of what we know, we only create more of the same.
This is it. This is it. And it's like, do you want more of the same or do you want something different? But you have to be prepared that it's not going to happen in a second. And especially for women, and I get it, like when you're uncomfortable in your body, and I know so many women when they're going through menopause, you know, their body changes and they're really uncomfortable in themselves, they don't feel good. And I'm like, absolutely, we're going to work on that. Do not worry. We will get you where you want to be. We can get you in a body that you feel great in, but it can't be it can't be the start point. We have to work on the systems that are making that happen. And it's not as simple as just eat less and move more. Unfortunately, I would love it to be that simple. Men, fine. 20-year-old male, put them in a calorie deficit, get them in the gym, drop weight.
Golden.
Oh, easy peasy. Why did I not pick that audience? But
I know, right? Final question for you. I mean, I could ask you questions all day, but my final question for you is, if someone kind of wants to work with us, with you, you know, wants to kind of dive into this world of hormones, is ready to be supported and is ready to change, because the truth is, you know, neither of us want to work with anybody that isn't ready to deep dive. But if someone wants to work with you specifically, Sarah, on the foundations that you talked about, you know, moving through that kind of era of working on the gut, working on the liver, being willing to put themselves first, you know, where do they go? Like, what's the next step? Obviously, I'll put things in the show notes, but, you know, where should they go? What should be their focus, and how can they work with you?
So I offer a free wellness discovery call that any woman can book if
That's
they want
wild.
to.
You are going to be so fully booked after this podcast. You're going to be like, I wish I hadn't said it was free. Check the show notes in case I've changed it and it no longer says free.
It just says discovery call. But that's to see, you know, whether I am the right fit for you. Because again, you know, you have to feel comfortable with a coach. You have to feel like they are the right coach for you. And I might not be the right coach for you. So I like to have those calls with women to really assess what's going on with them, make sure that I am the right fit for them, help them understand where they're at and what needs to change, and to assess as well whether they're ready for that change. That's really important to me, because like you said, I can't help people that aren't ready to be helped. And some people think they are, but sometimes they're not. They have to be at that point. So booking a free wellness discovery call is probably the best way. And then I work with women in a multiple of different ways. So I have a group program called the Thrive program, which we run together, which is kind of like nailing the fundamentals, the very basics. And some people need that. If people are already doing that, then I'm like, you probably need one of my longer, you know, one-to-one programs, which is a lot more in-depth, a lot more hand-holding, and where we really work through the systems of the body, like the liver, the gut, then, you know, hormones, and it involves testing and all fun things that I love geeking out on, where I can get people's test results. And I'm like,
I can't wait for you to get my test. They're due imminently.
I'm so excited.
They're due imminent. And it's so weird. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get my friend's urine test. Like,
woo! I can't wait.
She's
so
such
excited.
a nerd.
I am.
Sarah, honestly, thank you so much for joining us today. Like, I could talk to you all day. You know, I'm so grateful for our friendship. I'm so grateful for the journey we've been on together, and the things we've learned, the things we've bitched about, the things that we've laughed about, the things that we've been able to share, and some of the, you know, the vulnerable conversations that would, you know, never appear on a podcast. So,
and things we've been able to create together, which I am so grateful for you for.
We're just at the beginning, so stay tuned. No comment, but just stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Please.
Thank you for being my very first guest
Thank
on the
you.
Lucy Superfox Show.